Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer 3 mod review. The mod in question is Beasts of Khorne, which adds in Khorngors, two different types to be in fact, and also brings in the Gorgon of Khorne. So this is a bunch of Beastmen units for the Khorne faction, which I think kind of adds a bit more flavor, especially the Khorngors, as we've been waiting for Khorngors for a very long time. Well, any god-touched Beastmen for that matter, but hey, hopefully we'll see the new interpretation of them in the future. But until then, we've got a really cool mod here by Dead Baron, Karma, Not So Skelly Bones, and finally Governor Ren. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm not 100% too sure. So let's not waste any more time now and check out the units. So first we'll talk about the Gorgon of Khorne. We all know what a Gorgon is. It was introduced in the Silence and the Fury DLC for the Beastmen, and it's really weird because this is a unique unit. It's actually not a reskin or anything. It's a unique Gorgon of Khorne, which you see in the final mission, but then we don't see it anywhere. It's not a Regiment of Renown or anything, and it's really bizarre. I thought originally we were going to see this in Warhammer 3, as, you know, it kind of makes sense because it's god-touched, but yeah, nothing still. So at least it's getting put to good use here, where if you've played with the Gorgons before in Warhammer 2, you know how this works. It's an anti-large creature, it causes terror, it's armor-piercing, it's got a lot of damage, it does some scaling attacks because obviously it's cornate, and just generally it's able to take out some big beasties. Moving on to the second unit, we have two variants here. These are the Khorngors. So what these are god-touched bestigors. Essentially, god-touched beastmen is probably the best way to explain them, and they've got a variety of different uses. Decent stats all around with quite a bit higher armor, especially for a cornate creature, and it's also got armored and shielded, it's got scaling damage once again. Stats overall are good. It's a frontline unit, it looks really cool. The modders have gone for an extra mile here, especially with the Beastmen heads here, where rather than looking like just recolored goats, they're more dog-like, which makes sense because they're cornate. And just in general, they're pretty cool. I really like them. I think that they're done pretty well. They're a great frontline unit, especially since you can use them for pretty much anything. And we've got a second variant here, which is with the great weapons. So now you've got something which is armor piercing. These are quite good overall. We do lack a lot of armor piercing when it comes to Khorne. Mind you, you've got a lot of heavy damage, which kind of counters that. But if you're going to be dealing with Chaos factions or other Khornate factions which will have a lot of Chaos Warriors or Skull Crushers, you're going to want a little bit of something to fight back with. So as expected, the units can be used in both custom battles and campaign, and it won't take too long to be able to get them depending on how you build up with Khorne. Keep in mind that growth is always a bit weird with Khorne, but the Khorngors themselves can be found in the same building as your Bloodletters, your Exalted Bloodletters, so it's only a tier 3 thing. It won't take too long if you are just keeping aggressive and being able to get the procs for the extra growth. Now, the Gorgons of Khorne can be found in the same building where you get your generic Bloodthirster unit. So that's a tier 5. It's going to take a while to be able to get, but it kind of pairs up really nicely. Having a big beastie up front being supported by flying Bloodthirsters on the flank or rear is always pretty good. And the reason why they're separated into these sections is because those same units will pair up with the upgrades. So the upgrades that you have for Bloodletters will affect your Khorngors. The upgrades that you have for your Bloodthirsters will affect your Gorgon, which I think works out really well, because those are ones that you're going to go for anyway, so it's not really making you go to parts of the tech tree that you won't really focus on. So I've played with the mod for a while, and I'm going to show off a test battle here. This is obviously a custom battle with a randomly generated Nurgle army, as I like picking on Nurgle, plus it kind of fits with the heavy damage output of Khorne versus the resilience of Nurgle, so we're kind of half and half. And as you can see from my army list, I've got Khorngors, mostly the ones with swords and shield, one Gorgon, 2 units of the Minotaurs of Khorne, each with the different weapons, and 1 unit of Khorngors with great weapons too. I didn't want to bring in a lot of anti-armor stuff because we're dealing mostly with flesh, not armor, and I think this is a great way to showcase stuff, just to go full, well, just full Beastmen. I know a lot of people have been missing the Beastmen armies, and this gives you some bit of that. Obviously, it works a lot better if you mix it up with some demons or even some Chaos Warriors, because they would just synergize a lot better than just going full certain bit of the roster, because that limits you quite well. But if you want to go full Beastmen, that is very much possible. And you can see here, it does take a while to get there. I'm already getting some heavy hits on the Gorgon. The Gorgon does go up front by himself. and that was just to pin down the Great Unclean One, mostly because that way I could actually do some damage, but I wasn't expecting that much damage being done to me. I've got a Herald here with the Blood Furnace just to get a little bit of stats coming out, but in most cases the Khorngors are holding down the enemy whilst the Minotaurs do the majority of the damage, I must say. However, they work quite well, and they're still able to do quite a bit out. I think the shielded Khorngors did very well against any Plague Bearers they were up against, and naturally they got a lot stronger as time progressed, as they got some kills and their damage scaled up more and more. This was one of the first few times I had to use the other abilities, you know, the stuff that you get for racking up the kills, because Nurgle is very, very strong. They did have a lot more units than I did. Admittedly, in custom battle, yeah, they're a little bit expensive, and, well, pretty much all of the Beastmen are pretty expensive. My roster being so small kept me at a, well, very even pace with the Nurgle forces, I must say. It was really interesting to see this progress more and more. Unstoppable Force versus Immovable Object is always really fun to test out, and I really did enjoy this. In campaign, what I use them more for supporting troops, usually following with a second army sometimes. It very much depends. I do have to admit that I did get a lot more use out of the Gorgons, but that's mostly because, well, you need something which is anti-large, and it kind of pairs up very nicely, especially as the campaign progresses. You're going to be dealing with more and more large troops if the AI just focuses on doom stacks. Being able to get some of the Khorngors was also quite helpful early on if I was fighting against loads of armies that would bring in loads of units. So for example, I had a lot of Khorngors running around the areas of Sylvania, mainly because I use a mod which makes the other minor factions a bit more active. The vampires were coming in and doing a lot of damage, so I wanted to use the Khorngors to be able to fight back. The problem is that they will break, and this is something that you need to know, because yes, they are beastmen at the end of the day. I myself would make them unbreakable, but that's just my personal preference. Obviously, the interpretation of the modder would be different, and we don't know how Khorngors will be eventually if we ever see them in Warhammer 3, or if they ever get updated for, say, Old World or Age of Sigmar. They have something for, obviously, Blood Bowl, but that's it for some reason. Overall, my thoughts are the Gorgon is great, the anti-armor units for the Khorngors are fantastic, the Sword and Board one, well, it's great to hold down enemies, so it very much depends on what you personally like about them, but the mod is fantastic. I would say I really enjoy this, and it does bring in a little bit more flavor. It does help out Khorne's faction, which is a weird thing to say because Khorne is probably the best at the moment. Well, tied with Tzeentch, but you know what I mean. But with all that being said, the mod can be found in the description below, and if you want to play as Khorne again, this is probably the perfect time to do so. And yeah, I'll let the battle play out because there's some quite close moments, so I think that might be kind of fun to see. Let me know what you guys think about the mod in the description below, and yeah, have a nice day.
Taker of Scars. Beastmen. Fast. Murder them. Close. Dark beasts. Annihilate. Herald of Khorne. Akam Shai. Up. Casca! Taker of skulls! Slay! Bloodletter supreme!